After years of silence, a familiar figure returns to the heart of the ranch. The wind carries his name, the horses seem to recognize his presence, and Amy's world stops for a moment that feels like forever. Ty Borden, the man whose love-shaped Heartland, is back. But this time, his return isn't just a reunion. It's a moment that will test every emotion, every memory, and every promise ever made under the open Alberta sky. Ty Borden's story has always been more than a character's path. It's a heartbeat of Heartland itself. When Ty first rode up to the ranch all those years ago, he was broken in ways only time could heal. A troubled past, a boy searching for a place to belong, and a life marked by mistakes that weren't entirely his own. But Heartland was more than just a ranch. It was a chance at redemption. Under Jack's quiet wisdom and Amy's gentle strength, Ty began to rebuild. Every fence he mended, every horse he saved, became a step toward finding himself again. Through the seasons, viewers didn't just watch Ty grow, they felt his journey. He learned that family isn't always the one you're born into, but the one that stays when the world turns cold. His bond with Jack was more than mentorship. It was the father-son relationship neither of them knew they needed. With Amy, his love story became something timeless, a partnership built on faith, healing, and second chances. Together, they faced wild storms, broken hearts, and moments that made everyone watching believe in love again. Ty wasn't perfect. He stumbled, he questioned himself, and sometimes he walked away from the people who loved him most. But what made him special was his fight, the quiet determination to do better, to be better. Every time he came back, whether from the wilderness or from within his own doubts, it reminded everyone that growth comes from pain. And healing doesn't happen overnight. The ranch changed him, and he changed the ranch. From the boy who didn't know where he belonged, Ty became the man who held the family together. His laughter in the barn, his steady hands with the horses, his quiet moments with Amy under the stars, all became part of the land's rhythm. Heartland breathed differently when Ty was around. It felt whole, alive, steady. And then, just as the audience thought the story had reached its peace, tragedy struck. Ty's absence left a silence too deep to fill. Amy's world fell apart, and so did the hearts of millions who had walked with them for years. His story seemed to end too soon, leaving behind questions no one could answer and emotions that never found closure. For many, it wasn't just the end of a character. It was the loss of hope, of warmth, of a dream they'd held close. But Heartland has always been about resilience. It's about learning that life doesn't end with loss. It bends, it hurts, but it goes on. And now, as season 20 begins, something shifts in the air again. There's a whisper of change, a feeling that Ty's journey isn't finished yet. His name returns in quiet moments, in the soft glances of Amy, in the way the light hits the ranch at dawn. Maybe it's memory. Maybe it's destiny. Or maybe it's the kind of miracle that only happens when love refuses to fade. Amy has carried his absence like a shadow, but in the stillness of the ranch, there are signs. A horse that won't be tamed until she speaks his name. A dream that feels too real. A message in the wind that says, I never left. It's not just nostalgia. It's something deeper. The kind of presence that can't be explained by reason, but can be felt in the soul. Ty Borden is coming home. Not as he was, but as something new, a force that will stir every emotion buried beneath the pain. His comeback isn't just about him returning to Heartland. It's about Amy finding herself again, about healing the wounds that never fully closed, and about reminding everyone that some bonds are unbreakable. Even by time or distance, Heartland has seen heartbreak before, but this is different. This is the story of a love that refuses to die, of a man whose spirit still lives where the mountains meet the sky. Ty's journey began with pain, but now it returns with purpose. The ranch remembers him, and so does every viewer who ever believed in second chances. Because sometimes the heart finds its way back home. Even after everything. After Ty was gone, Heartland changed in quiet, almost invisible ways. The fields still glowed golden in the sunlight, the horses still ran free, and the wind still danced through the trees, but there was an emptiness that even the sky couldn't hide. Amy moved through her days with strength that looked unshakable, but deep down, every moment carried a weight. She laughed for Lindy's sake, worked hard for the ranch, but her eyes carried a softness that spoke of something missing, a rhythm that used to match her heart with ties. Time didn't stop, but it slowed. Each sunrise felt heavier, each sunset quieter. The house that once echoed with laughter now felt too big. Jack, ever the strong pillar, tried to hold the family together, but even he would pause at the corral sometimes, his gaze lost somewhere far away, as if waiting for a familiar figure to walk through the gate again. There was love all around, from Lou, from Tim, from the family, but no one could fill the space Ty had left. He wasn't just gone. He was woven into every fence post, every hoofbeat, every memory that made Heartland feel like home. Amy tried to convince herself that healing meant moving forward. She buried herself in her work, helping horses that carried their own pain. Each horse became a reflection of her, wounded but trying to trust again. Yet every now and then, something small would catch her off guard. A leather jacket hanging in the corner, the smell of pine that reminded her of their trail rides, the sound of footsteps on gravel that made her heart skip before she remembered. It was as if life kept whispering his name, even when she tried not to listen. Lindy, too young to remember fully, began to ask questions. "Mom, what was Daddy like?" Her innocent voice pierced through Amy's heart like sunlight through a storm cloud. Amy told her stories about how Ty could calm even the wildest horse, how his smile could melt the hardest day, how he always said family was his greatest adventure. But inside, every story reopened a wound she thought had healed. Still, she spoke, because she wanted Lindy to know her father not as a memory, but as a part of who she was. Jack noticed the signs before anyone else. He saw how Amy would pause when the wind shifted, how she'd glance toward the ridge as if expecting something. The old man didn't say much, he never did, but he believed that the ones we love never truly leave. Maybe it was faith, or maybe it was just his years of living through love and loss, but he could feel something stirring. The heart remembers, he'd tell her. Sometimes it takes the right moment to listen, and that moment came quietly. One night, as the sky burned with the last light of day, Amy dreamed of Ty. Not the way she remembered him, but clearer, closer. He wasn't speaking, but his eyes said everything. He stood in the field, the same one where they once rode side by side, and looked at her with that calm, steady gaze she knew so well. When she woke, the world felt different. The air was warmer, the silence softer. The horses were restless, almost alert, as if sensing what she did, something had changed. She brushed it off at first. Dreams can feel real when the heart is lonely. But then, strange little moments began to happen. Spartan, her horse, reacted to something unseen, ears pricked, steps cautious, as if waiting for someone. A photograph on the mantel fell, though no wind had touched it. And when Amy picked it up, it was the picture of her and Ty, their hands together, their smiles bright, their world still whole. It wasn't fear that filled her, it was peace, the kind she hadn't felt in years. That night, she sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, looking out at the dark fields. The stars shimmered above, quiet witnesses to her thoughts. "If you're out there," she whispered, "I hope you know we're okay. But I miss you." And in the stillness, just for a moment, she felt warmth against her cheek, like the brush of a familiar hand. Something was calling her back, not backward into grief, but forward into something new. Maybe Ty's story wasn't finished. Maybe the love they built was finding its way back in a different form. In her dreams, in her daughter's laughter, in the land that had always held them close. Amy didn't understand it yet, but Heartland was waking up again, and somewhere. In the quiet spaces between memory and reality, Ty Borden was coming home. The morning after Amy's dream, Heartland seemed different. The sky stretched wider, the air felt softer, and the ranch carried a stillness that wasn't empty, it was expectant, like the earth itself was holding its breath. Amy woke before sunrise, pulled on her jacket, and stepped outside. The chill bit her skin, But it wasn't the cold that made her pause, it was the sound. Faint, distant, but familiar. A steady rhythm, like hoofbeats echoing from beyond the ridge. For a second, she thought it was her imagination. But the horses stirred too, lifting their heads, ears twitching toward the sound. And in that heartbeat of silence that followed, something deep inside her whispered, "He's here." Amy tried to shake the feeling off. Grief, she told herself, plays tricks on the heart. But Heartland had always been more than a place, it was alive with memory. Every corner carried stories, every breeze carried voices of the past. Still, she needed to feel grounded, so she went to the barn to start her chores. But even there, things felt touched. Ty's old tools were still hanging where he'd left them, but one was missing, a wrench he always kept by the stall gate. All day, little things kept happening. The horses were restless but calm, moving in rhythm, as if waiting for instruction. The family noticed it too. Lou mentioned the strange peace that had settled over the ranch. Even Jack said the past few days felt different, but none of them could explain why. Amy didn't tell them about the dream or the wrench. Some things were too fragile to speak aloud. Instead, she let herself believe just for a moment that maybe Ty was closer than she thought. That night, she found herself drawn back to the field where she'd seen him in her dream. The grass swayed softly under the silver moonlight, the river whispered nearby, and the stars painted their quiet magic across the sky. It was the same place where Ty once told her, "No matter what happens, this is where I'll always be." She closed her eyes, letting the memory wash over her. The laughter, the promises, the love that never really left. When she opened them, she could almost see him standing at the edge of the field, looking at her with that same steady calm. Her heart pounded. She blinked, and the vision faded. But the warmth stayed. Over the next few days, the signs grew stronger. Lindy started talking about her father in ways Amy couldn't explain. "Mommy," she said one morning, "Daddy told me the horses miss him." Amy froze, the spoon slipping from her hand. "When did Daddy tell you that?" she asked softly. Lindy just smiled, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "In my dream," she said, but it felt real. "He said you don't have to be sad anymore." Amy wanted to believe it was just imagination, but deep down, she knew the truth. The same presence that touched her dreams was reaching their daughter too. Jack began to sense it as well. One evening, he sat on the porch, staring out at the fading light. "Sometimes the ones we love," he said quietly, "they find their way back when we need them most." Amy looked at him, her eyes full of questions she couldn't ask. Jack didn't explain further, he didn't have to. He'd seen enough life to know that not every return could be understood. Some were felt, not seen. As days passed, Amy's strength began to shift. The heaviness in her chest started to lift, replaced by a calm she hadn't felt in years. When she worked with the horses, her movements were lighter, more in tune, as if someone was guiding her hands. The other trainers noticed it too. "You've got your spark back," one of them said. Amy smiled faintly. She didn't tell them that sometimes, when she reached out to calm a frightened horse, she could almost feel Ty's hands over hers the same way they used to train together. Side by side, Heartland was waking up again, not just as a place, but as a soul reborn. The land, the animals, even the people all carried a pulse that felt familiar. It wasn't about ghosts or visions. It was about love finding its way through time and distance. Ty's comeback wasn't about walking through the door, it was about returning through the things he loved, through the hearts that remembered him. And though Amy didn't know it yet, this was only the beginning. The signs were growing stronger, guiding her toward a truth she could no longer deny. Ty Borden was not gone. He was part of Heartland, part of her, and part of the story that refused to end. The morning broke differently that day. The golden light poured over the fields like a promise, soft and unshakable. Heartland was quiet, but not in the way it used to be. It wasn't the silence of grief anymore, it was the stillness before something beautiful. Amy stood by the fence, watching the horses graze, and for the first time in a long while, she felt peace instead of pain. The air was warm, almost alive. carrying a feeling that she couldn't name but somehow understood. It was as if the world had shifted, realigned itself around something she couldn't see but could feel deep in her bones. She walked into the barn. The same barn where she and Ty had spent countless hours laughing, arguing, and dreaming. The sunlight streamed through the old wooden beams, painting the dust in golden swirls. Everything looked the same, yet something was undeniably different. The radio, which hadn't worked in months, suddenly crackled to life. A soft, familiar tune began to play, one they used to listen to on long evenings after work. The sound froze her in place. Her hands trembled as she reached to turn it off, but then she stopped. The melody wasn't haunting. It was comforting, like a quiet hello from somewhere beyond. Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from understanding. Ty wasn't gone. He was right there in every note, every whisper of wind that passed through the open barn doors. Amy smiled through her tears. "You always knew how to find your way back," she whispered. It wasn't madness or imagination. It was love doing what love always does, finding a way to return. That same day, Amy took Spartan out for a ride. The trail was one she and Ty had ridden countless times. As they galloped through the open fields, she could almost hear his voice beside her, steady, patient, warm. Every corner of the ranch felt alive again. The river sparkled as if greeting her. The trees seemed to lean closer, listening. Amy slowed her horse near the ridge and looked out over the valley. For a moment, she closed her eyes and breathed deeply, letting the wind brush against her face. It carried that familiar scent of pine and earth that always reminded her of Ty. And when she opened her eyes, she didn't see him, but she felt him. That quiet certainty, that steady strength. He was there, in spirit, in energy, in every heartbeat of the land. When she returned home, Jack was waiting by the porch. He looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "You look different," he said softly. Amy smiled, her eyes glistening. "I think I finally understand," she replied. Jack nodded, the corners of his mouth lifting. "He never really left, did he?" She shook her head. "No, he's here, just in a new way." There was no sadness in her voice this time, only peace. That night, as the stars scattered across the sky, Amy tucked Lindy into bed. The little girl clutched her favorite horse toy and looked up at her mother. "Mommy," she whispered, "Daddy said he's proud of us." Amy froze, her heart thudding. "When did he tell you that?" she asked gently. Lindy smiled sleepily. "In my dream. He said he loves us, and he's happy we're smiling again." Amy brushed her daughter's hair back and kissed her forehead. "He's always with us," she said quietly. "Always." After Lindy fell asleep, Amy stepped outside. The moon hung low, glowing softly over the ranch. The air hummed with life. She could feel Ty everywhere, the warmth of his hand in the breeze, the echo of his laugh in the rustle of leaves, the calm strength of his heart in her own steady pulse. She realized then that this was Ty's true comeback, not through body, but through the bond that even death couldn't break. He had returned to remind her that love isn't about holding on, it's about carrying forward. From that night on, everything began to change. Amy started smiling more, working with the horses the way she used to, with that unshakable connection, that quiet magic. The ranch felt lighter, brighter, as if Ty's presence had healed more than just her heart, it had healed Heartland itself. The family noticed too. There was laughter again during dinner, music playing softly through the house, and a warmth that had been missing for far too long. Amy began to teach Lindy the same lessons Ty once taught her: patience, trust, and kindness. Sometimes, when they trained a horse together, Lindy would laugh and say, "Daddy would be proud, right?" And Amy would nod, smiling through her tears. "He is proud," she'd say. "He's watching every step." Heartland had always been about family, love, and second chances. Ty's return reminded everyone that love doesn't end when someone's gone. It grows, transforms, and lives on in the hearts of those left behind. His presence was no longer a memory trapped in the past. It was a guiding light for the future. In the quiet hours of the evening, when the world slowed and the stars shimmered above, Amy often found herself whispering into the wind, Not words of goodbye, but words of gratitude. Thank you for finding your way home, she'd say softly. And somewhere in that vast, endless sky, it felt like the wind answered back. Ty Borden's comeback wasn't just an emotional return, it was a rebirth of hope, love, and the belief that the heart never truly loses what it once held dear. Heartland would never be the same again, because the man who once left had come back in the most powerful way possible, through the love that never fades and the spirit that never leaves.